Hi, and welcome to my YouTube channel, BH Wolf Feathers. I will be working on some feathers today, kind of trying to get them in shape so that I can paint on them or create other things with them at a later time. So, I haven't made too many videos that are me talking because I'm just not an in front of the camera kind of person. So, forgive me for whatever gaffes and goofs that I happen to come up with. Alright, so for those of you who are not familiar with wildlife, the circle of life, animals in general, or what happens to them after hunters and farmers and ranchers utilize the meat, this might be disturbing. And if it is, I don't expect you to stay around and, watch it. That's okay. But for those who want to learn how to care for the feathers and make something out of them, then this channel's for you. Now, I'll be doing other things as well, probably walking around, picking up rocks and looking at trees and maybe seeing some critters every now and then. So it's not just going to be about handling feathers and painting and that sort of thing. Okay, so to start with, I have friends all over the place, and they sometimes send me gifts in the mail. And this is an entire turkey tail from a bronze turkey that was harvested. I do not know if it was harvested in a farm environment or if it was harvested by a hunter. I'm not privy to that information. But these have been partially preserved. Okay, when I say partially preserved, I mean that the person who harvested it put it in a container with salt and or borax. And what that does is it draws out any fatty fluids, and it also helps to desiccate or dry out the tailbone area of the turkey where all of the feathers are attached. It also keeps the smell down. So nobody wants to be getting raw materials like this in the mail if they smell like they have been, roadkill for a week. So we don't do that. We make sure that they're handled in a good way. So it still looks a little bit messy, but that's just because I have to clean it up. See, this is really dry. See, that's very dry there. And all of those white bits are salt and borax. So by the time I get through with this, it'll be all cleaned up and pretty. And each of the feathers will be separated individually so that I can paint on them or turn them into smudge fans or whatever I feel like doing. So we have actually two different types. This one is, I want to say a Rio, but it could be an Osceola. And those people who hunt and are, more knowledgeable in these things are probably going to go, hey, lady, that's a, and that's okay. I don't mind getting good information. So you can actually see that there's a difference in the coloration. And there's a difference in the size. And size generally is due to either one's a male, one's a female, or the age. Also, the species, because in domestic turkeys, you have turkeys that range everywhere from, say, 15 pounds all the way up to 22, 25 pounds. And so they are going to have feathers that are different sizes because they're different breeds of turkeys. And I said species. I meant breeds of turkeys. Okay, so what we're going to do here, I'm going to set the phone on a little rack here and a little stand, and I'm going to start working on these feathers with my razor. I do kind of a preliminary thing where I just separate them out and cut them free. Now, I don't like to cut the shafts, so I'm going to try my best to cut them free at the base, which is down here. And so some of these feathers are going to be trimmed up to where, see, that just pulls right out. Some of them will be trimmed up later on. Right now, all I'm doing is I'm separating them. So I'm going to pull these out of here. Some of them are going to be easier to remove than others. See, those are pretty easy to pull out. Sometimes you can do it with pliers. I don't really care for pliers because it crushes the shaft. When you crush the shaft, it makes them easier to break. I don't really want to do that. Some of them, it's going to be inevitable because they're already damaged at the base from the processes of harvesting a bird or, you know, trying to dry it out or whatever. One thing that you want to be sure to do after you've got them pulled out and you want to get them cleaned up, you want to soak them in a bucket of warm water. And I usually add, and people think I'm nuts, but it works pretty well. I usually add some type of inexpensive human shampoo conditioner combination. And the reason I do that is because when you wash them, like with soap or whatever, to get out debris or smell or anything else, or just to sanitize them, you end up stripping all of the natural oils out of the feather. So a bird has an oil gland, and in the case of a turkey, it is right there at the base of the tail, where the tail connects to the body. There's a little nub, and there's an oil gland in there. And that oil gland, they take and rub their head on it, and then they rub it all through their feathers, and they might even take their beak and nibble on it a little bit, get some of that oil on their beak, and then they run that through their feathers. And that's to keep their feathers in condition. And they have to keep their feathers in condition for several reasons. One, their feathers are protection. They're actually like modified scales. So they overlap in such a way that they protect the bird from bad weather, from cold temperatures, and even in the summertime when it's really, really super hot, they can fluff them up, and it allows air circulation around the body. So it's really important for them to keep their feathers in good shape, which is why feather mites are a horrible thing to have on a bird, because it destroys the bird's ability, the feathers, to stay in good condition, and they end up suffering physically because of it. And that's, you know, we look for that too. Whenever we're cleaning, we want to look for any insect activity. You want to look for any little egg casings or any little tiny things crawling around in there, because you got to get rid of those suckers, because you don't want that in your artwork. You don't want it in your home, and you definitely don't want it around your birds if you have domestic birds. So, and we'll go into that a little bit later on. So as you can see, I'm getting these out of here pretty quickly. It's a lot harder with the bigger feathers, so we do those a little differently, but they just pull right out of there. You can see, I don't know if you can see this in here. The light's not real great. You see all those little holes? That's where those hair follicles, they're like hair follicles. They're feather follicles, and they are holes in the skin. Now, when the bird is alive, there's blood flow going into the feathers through those holes up into the shafts, which are also the very bottom part of which are hollow. Now, when the feathers first come out on the bird and start growing, the shaft is hollow further up, and you actually will be able to see the blood up in the shaft. As the feather matures on the bird, then the blood recedes down into the base of the feather, and that's how you can tell a lot of times if this feather was harvested, pulled off of a live bird. So if you find feathers, or somebody gives you feathers, or you buy feathers that have a lot of dark material up inside the shaft, that means it was removed from the bird while the bird was alive, which is pretty much like yanking your hair out by the roots. It does cause them to bleed, and it's very uncomfortable for them. So you won't see that in naturally molted feathers, and you won't see that in feathers that are taken from a bird that's already, you know, been harvested for food or whatever. Okay. So, as I'm going along, I imagine you're wondering, well, how, aside from washing with shampoo, how do you sanitize these feathers? Well, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. One of which is to steam them. You can use a steam iron for that, where you fold a towel, put a towel down on your board or your ironing board, whatever, and you put the feathers inside of that, and then you fold a towel over on top of that. And you have to do them 1, 2 at a time. You can't just take the whole tail and stick it in there, because that won't work. I mean, well, it might, but it's not going to be easy to do, and it's just going to cause you more headaches. So, what you want to do is you want to get your iron up to steam temperature. You don't want it completely off the charts super high, because you'll end up damaging your feather. So you want it just to where it'll start steaming. And then you have one fold of the towel over your feather, and then you just take and very gently iron that feather, and it will get hot enough to destroy any kind of like organisms or anything like that without destroying the feather. However, you can't just sit there and do it over and over and over again. You have to check the feather, make sure that your shaft is not buckling or warping or bubbling or anything else, because that means you've got it too hot. The shaft is very waxy, so you don't want to damage it if you don't have to. Another way you can sanitize them, if you have a large enough microwave and don't care whether or not you stick dirty turkey feathers in there, is you can put them in a paper bag, like a lunch type bag, paper bag, and you can microwave them 10 to 15 seconds at a time. You can't do it more than that, because the same thing will happen to the shaft that we were just talking about with the iron. It will cause them to bubble and warp and come apart, and it's not going to be useful after that. Okay, now as you can see, I'm starting to get into the ones that are just a little bit more difficult to pull out. You hear that one actually pop. So I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to remove these ones on the back. Just kind of work my way up. I may have to make this into a part 2, part 3 sort of a thing. It depends on how long it takes me. Depends on how long you want to watch. So I'll continue to do this on the back side to free these feathers and to get down to the base where my big tail feathers are. And see all the colors. You know, these feathers are all usable as long as you can get the salt and borax out of them, or any other debris. They're all usable. There's no reason to throw these away just because they're not the great big ones. These are great for cleaning up and using for accents on your larger projects. You can make a lot of really cool things with fluffy feathers. I use a lot of these tips like this. Not necessarily that specific one because it's got a hole in it, but you can take these. I like to trim them up, and I can make earrings out of them. I can use them as accent feathers for my paintings and my smudge fans. So I try not to lose any more of them than is absolutely necessary. Stay tuned for part 2. Hope you like watching people pull feathers out of turkey tails, because you're going to get more of that. Thanks for watching.